What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York, and on Zoom, we are here with Dave of the Almighty Psycroptic. Thank you for being here today. It's great to have you here.
Thank you very much. It's very cool to be here.
Yeah, absolutely, and great timing as well because we got the brand new album, Divine Council, coming out very soon. What was the sort of thought process going into the making of this album? Were you kind of like just picking up where you left off from As the Kingdom Drowns, or was this meant to signify like a new start for the band in a way?
Uh, yeah, I guess you could say musically handing the baton from one album to the other. Continuing the thread, but not wanting to repeat ourselves. That's kind of what we do. It's kind of an unspoken thing. We don't really say, okay, we have to write a song like this, and then we're going to write a song like this. It's just once we have done an album, it just seems that musically, all of us agree unspoken that we want to do something different and fresh, but it still contains that psychroptic sound that I think somehow we've developed over the years.
Do you feel that the first two singles that you released off of this new album is a good representation of what the entirety of Divine Council is going to sound like, or is that just scratching the surface?
Probably, we always find it hard to agree on which songs that we want to do for the singles because inevitably the singles are the ones where a lot of the fans get accustomed to first, so they want to hear them live. So I guess there's a little bit of discussion. Okay, which songs do we want to play live? And also, getting a little bit of an outside opinion, give it to the label, and sometimes they'll point out some things that we couldn't see with some of the songs that, this might be a better single, because sometimes you can't be objective. So it's good to have an outside opinion, but, ultimately we'd have the final say. But yeah, we always find it hard to agree. So I think we all agreed that Render Thunder should be the first song because this is pretty killer, and we probably should put this in the live set. So it's a little bit different from the rest of the tracks. I do think the other singles that are coming are just as different and varied from each other. So yeah, it's a good representation of the album as a whole, I think.
And you mentioned like deciding what you're going to play live. I'd imagine with the making of every album, it gets harder and harder to put a set list together when playing live, right?
It does. There's quite a big back catalogue, and all of us have got different songs to play live for different reasons, so it's quite challenging. I'm not going to say there's compromises in terms of the song choice, but sometimes I guess we don't get to play our preferred favourite songs individually.
Yeah. Well,
so I guess that is the definition of a compromise, I guess.
Well, I've noticed that with like death metal in general, like regardless of what type of death metal and everything, like they have like the most dedicated fans where like I feel like in death metal shows you always get the most requests for deep cuts and people always know like those splits or demos that like are super rare and whatnot.
Which is killer, someone will come up and say, "Oh, can you play this song?" And I'll be like, "Which one's that?" I can't even remember what song that is.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's cool. It's cool.
I think one of the definitions of death metal is when the fans know the back catalog better than the actual band.
I think so. It's such an awesome and dedicated fan base. No, it was cool. We did some shows on the weekend, and we have, it's been a long time since playing live, and it's like, oh, okay, yeah, I remember this. Like, the fans are awesome, and as you said, they're asking for some of the deep cuts. And you're like, which album's that one off?
Yeah,
I can't remember.
Or their favorite song is like everybody in the band's least favorite song or something like that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and usually they've got the best justification for it as well. So okay, cool. Yeah, awesome.
There you go. I think death metal fans are better at explaining the music better than any fan of any other music.
Yeah, it's it's a world unto itself.
Definitely. Now, I feel like that there's a lot to celebrate with in the Psychroptic camp, not even just with the release of Divine Council, but I know that last year was actually the 20-year anniversary of the debut album, The Isle of Disenchantment, and I kind of wanted to turn back the clock a little bit and talk about a little bit in the back catalog with the debut album. Like, how would you say the band has evolved so much between the debut and Divine Council?
It's 20 years is a long time in anyone's life. We've been doing the band longer than we haven't now, so of course you're going to go through many musical and life changes in general over that time. So I would be horrified if the sound of the band didn't change. Which sounds hypocritical because when some of my favourite bands change, I'm like, why didn't they do this? I liked them when they did this sound. But to keep it interesting and fresh, and for us, it has to progress. It has to move forward. And I think that's what's kept the longevity and the enthusiasm up for us all, because we know that every single album, or every single song is going to be better than in our minds, we're trying to write the best song at any point in time. So that evolves. And once you've done something, you don't necessarily want to repeat it.
Yeah.
So yeah, musically, it sounds like two completely different bands, but I think there's still somewhat of the sound between those, albums.
I think there's a way to demonstrate evolution without completely abandoning what you've done before or previously.
Yeah, of course. Of course, we're proud of it. That was the best thing we could do at that point in time. But, to our ears, it's like, well, it's pretty amateurish and it's, not quite there, but, it's still got its charm and, it's still some people's favourite release of ours. And you can't take that away from anyone.
Definitely.
But yeah, if it didn't exist, we wouldn't exist now.
Yeah. And I mean, but any chance of like an anniversary celebration or maybe pulling out some deep cuts for that on like the next tour in a way, or are you kind of just like letting that sort of be its own little sort of moment in time?
Probably let it be its thing. I wouldn't mind playing one or two tracks of it, but that's always a challenge convincing the other guys. But I think, it's, probably leave it in its place, I'd say.
Fair enough. And speaking of another anniversary, but this year is the 10-year anniversary of the Inherited Repression. And correct me if I'm wrong, but like I think with the Inherited Repression and Servant, the album before it, that was sort of like the longest gap between albums. I believe that was sort of like a 4-year gap as opposed to like the 3-year gap between the self-titled and this and so on. So I was just wondering like what was the sort of memories with the Inherited Repression in a way, and sort of like what the band was going through at that time as well.
I guess I was talking about this to someone the other day. We don't really have I guess a set timeline between the albums, but it just naturally they seem to come out every 3 years or so. That seems to be the amount of time that it takes to write everything, put everything together, and fit into a release schedule. So yeah, hearing you say there's a 4-year gap, which obviously there is if I had a look at the release dates. Okay. Yeah. It was probably representative of, say the touring we did of Observant. Maybe we did a bit more touring around that album, and particular just life circumstances of everyone in the band at the time probably led to a bit more of a break between albums. I don't think, there's nothing that was particularly, I can't think of any like major event that held the album up. But probably, I would say it could even just be a lack of enthusiasm and motivation at that point in time, which definitely happens over the course of 20 plus years.
It's a natural process for an artist.
Yeah, exactly. And thinking back, I think Joe actually started to handle the majority of the production around this time, because in the past, he'd done different elements of the recording process, but I think this is one of the albums where he actually mixed. I think it was the first album he mixed for us. So that probably had a hand in it as well, giving him a bit more time and freedom to get a result that we're all happy with.
Yeah. And the final anniversary question I wanted to ask you is kind of looking forward to next year with the Scepter of the Ancients, because that being the sophomore album, it almost seemed like, from analyzing the Psycroptic catalog, every album is a continuation of evolution. And I feel like with the Scepter of the Ancients, that really, like, I've such an evolutionary jump between the debut and the sophomore album. Can we maybe see a celebration of that in a way, or the sophomore album, do you consider that to almost be a turning point in the Psycroptic catalog?
I think so. Well, I was always just meant to be initially it was meant to be just a demo tape. That's all we wanted to do, and literally, self-funded, everything was. We've still got a big DIY element in the band, a massive DIY element. And Isle it was supposed to be just a recording in our local studio. We're going to put it on demo tape. Then we looked at the production costs of a demo. It's like, it's cheaper to do CDs, so let's do a CD, and then let's call it an album instead of a demo. And I'd say Scepter felt like the first real album, even though, this is the second album. We'd learned a little bit more. We'd booked a little bit more time in the studio. We kind of found our feet and found our sound a little bit more. And it seems to be a lot of people's favourite release of ours, which is, it still blows me away. It's killer, but, we're only between 20 and 22 when we recorded it, so it's still very new and fresh, and but it's probably it's probably when we found our sound a lot more and a bit more of a direction. Yeah.
And they say you have your whole life to make your first album, but you have the rest of your life to do it again. So
yeah. It's a good testament of, okay, this is the best thing. Every album's the best thing you can do at that point in time, but I think a lot of stars aligned for it to come out when it did, and to get the reception it did. So it'd be cool to do something for the 20th anniversary. We wouldn't do an album tour where we're playing the live album. That's I'm going to nix that right now. Yeah. But maybe we'll do some sort of release around it. There's been a little bit of talk, so we'll see if we can pull it all together.
I will stop asking any more about that, because I like surprises. But going back to your artistry, because you're a very prolific artist, because outside of Psycroptic, you've played with multiple bands that too many of them to even name. Does the mindset or the creative process change depending on what project you are playing with, or is there kind of like a usual method that you apply to everything?
Well, I guess stylistically, I approach the songs in a similar way, but I'm always, the cliche is, you're trying to play for the music. So I think the performances will depend on which band I'm playing in, just because of the music. And I try to actually write the drums along to the guitar riffs and lock in with the riffs. So I guess Joe writes in a very particular way with Psycroptic, so that's why the drums sound like they do with Psycroptic, as opposed to, say, a band like Werewolves, where it's a bit more of just a frantic blast fest, or a band like the Amenta, who actually have quite quite a hand in the direction of how they like the drums, and there's got to be lots of drum demos and things like that. So yeah, it does. It depends. It depends. So ultimately, the music wins. To kind of, I guess, dodge your question a little bit, but yeah, I can't change the way I approach things, because that's the way I see things.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, not talking crap about any of the other musicians, but when you get riffs or a song presented to you without any drums on it, you could be honest. How off time is it somehow, and how much do you have to like adjust the rhythm and everything like that?
Sometimes the click tracks are a little bit wonky. Well, the click tracks are fine. Sometimes the playing is a little bit wonky. So when I get songs presented to me, I like them in a particular way. So if they're written already, it's like, cool, can you record it along to a click track? So the click track's always going to be in time.
Can't be set for anybody else.
Sometimes the playing can be a little bit wonked, but that gives me a chance to, okay, well, let me jam along to the song and see what comes out. So I'll just keep playing along to it and let the parts evolve. I don't find it interesting if someone says, hey, do you want to play in this project? Here's the music and here's the drums. It's like, well, isn't that my job? Like, don't you want me to come up with the drum part? So I avoid those sort of, well, that would be a job, you know, rather than a musical project that I'm involved with. So I'm very privileged to be able to play with a lot of different super talented musicians from different styles that allow me to do different things musically within the metal realm, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. And I have a few more questions for you, but I just started asking drummers this, kind of like a sort of cliche question, but as we all know, drums don't really have melody, and a lot of musicians were saying, you know, melody is what expresses my emotion, and, you know, and the sound of the melody. But I feel like drums, with the physical nature of it, as well as, you know, the technical excellence that needs to be incorporated in it, would you say that there are certain drum patterns, or there are certain drum anything that you kind of have like an emotional connection to, that maybe like a song that you played on has like reflects a personal aspect of you, even if it's not expressed through melody?
That is a good question. Well, it's hard for me to separate it, because the drums will become part of the song. So there's definitely, I guess, the ultimate tester is if, you know, the hair on your arms stand up on end. So, okay, I'm being moved by this particular music, which definitely happens in certain parts of certain bands. So I think they're both connected. You know, they can't be separated. Once the drums are on there, that's how they go. You know, when working out parts to songs, you know, I'll just play them over and over again and let the parts actually, it's going to sound a bit cliche, I guess, whatever. I'll let the parts write themselves. You know, the different parts will rise to the surface. You know, I might play the song multiple times and just experiment with different ideas, improvise, and after a while, certain parts will just be the same. So, in effect, they do write themselves, and then I'm kind of, I guess, just a vehicle for, quote unquote, my musical expression. So, yeah, it's hard to separate it from the music. Hopefully that kind of answered your question in a roundabout way.
No,
it took us off track.
It definitely did. I mean, one of my favorite drum patterns, and it's ironic too because it's from such a simple song, but Pet Cemetery by the Ramones. When you're hearing that just like double snare sound, there's something that sort of like cuts deep about it, that where like if I took the music out and just heard that drum play through, it would still kind of speak to me in a similar fashion.
Yeah, yeah. It's like it is part of the song. You can't take it out. If you took it away, then the melody wouldn't be the same. You know.
Yeah.
You know.
Absolutely. There needs to be there. I think in New York, I don't know if this has brought it internationally yet, but here in the New York scene, we do have a drummer appreciation day because of how much they have to hold things
Oh,
together.
cool. We do have to lug a lot of shit around.
Yeah, you have to carry all the shit. You have to hold the song together. You have to listen to see what parts is. I mean, you guys are tasked with so much. I think something went wrong in the deal.
Yeah, yeah. I'd go back and I'd play guitar because then I'd actually feel like a musician.
Oh, there you go. So, before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time today and for such a awesome in-depth conversation. It was great to be able to, talk about the past and the present and the future of Psychroptic. Is there just anything else that you would like to promote for the release of this new album? Can we be expecting to see Psychroptic back in North America? I remember the last date that you played in New York. It was April 12th, 2019. So.
Oh wow, yeah, yeah. What was the venue? Cool venue.
Gold Sounds.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And there was 8 big metal shows in the city that same day.
8. Okay, wow.
Yeah, Baroness was playing, Periphery was playing, Dream Theater was playing,
Oh wow.
Udo was playing. So.
And it's still a cool show from memory.
Yeah.
Yes, you will see us, and you'll hear about it very soon. Very soon.
And that's all you could say for now.
Yeah.
You'll tell me
Yes.
off. You'll tell me off the record when I turn the camera off.
Exactly. Yes, I will.
Thank you. Well, everybody,
Thank you so much.
anytime, everybody. We are here with Psychroptic. Be sure to check out Divine Council. This is Alex from Heavy New York, and we will see you next time.